may be seated.
Good morning, friends. Oh, this is awesome. There's so many of you. If I haven't met you before or you haven't heard me talk, my name's Mark, and it is a wild ride. Maybe a little bit more for you than for me, but it is also a wild ride for me, so I'm excited. But before I get into this, let me pray because I need that. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for another opportunity to love and serve you. Lord, it is such a pleasure to come here every week and to worship you in this church body. And so I thank you for that. I thank you for what you're doing in this church and for your love and for who you are, Lord. In your name, amen. All right, usually I get 2 services to work out all the kinks in my message. I only get 1 go at it. So if I'm shaking a little bit more than normal, that's probably why. Have any of you built a fire before? Keep it up if you've done it with a lighter. Keep it up. Matches. All right, keep it up, well done. Flint and steel, keep it up. Just some sticks, keep it up. Well done, look around you, those are the people to go to, all right? That's who you want to go to. I grew up, I was a Boy Scout, and man, I remember those long hours just rubbing sticks together and just thinking, why am I doing this? What? And my parents are paying for this. And here I am in the middle of nowhere just trying to make fire, and my scout leader just has a lighter in his back pocket. I didn't get it. But it was good. It was very formative. Fire is one of the most useful tools to mankind. And there's so many different uses for it. On the one hand, we can boil water to make it safe. We can cook food to make it safe. It brings heat during the winter. My wife and I, this whole last winter, heated our house just off of a wood stove, no electric or propane or anything. And I thought that was gonna be a whole lot cooler before we went into winter. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, it's 3 a.m. and freezing. And so we're okay though, so please don't read into that. We're fine. We live in a house, it's okay. It can be used to melt metal and to make it malleable, which then we can use to build buildings and structures. And fire can allow life to flourish and thrive. It can bring warmth when necessary. It can make food edible. There are so many uses, beautiful uses to fire. It has also been known to be one of the most destructive forces of nature. This picture, side by side, that one on the left turned out bad. That's my fault. This is the Eagle Creek Fire. If you recognize that, took place in 2017 in the Gorge. This ended up burning over 50,000 acres of land. And on the right is the Beachy Creek Fire that happened just up the road from us near Detroit. That one caused over 1,500 structures to burn and was one of the most destructive fires in Oregon's history. And these are both very recent. So on the one hand, we get fire that can create life and beauty and allow things to flourish. And on the other, we have this destructive force of nature. Few things I've found bring such contrasts and uses in a single thing. Fire can create life and allow it to flourish, or it can destroy it. In the book of James, he uses fire as an analogy for our words or tongue. In fact, in James 3:6, he says this: "The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and it itself set on fire by hell." Yeah, daggum. When I read that, I was like, man, that is some intense imagery there. But I think what James is getting at the root of this, and at the root of this section in James chapter 3 that we're looking at, is our words have immense power. Our words have power. Our words matter. How we use our tongue and our speech impacts those around us, and it impacts ourselves. How we speak about ourselves impacts who we are at our core. Our words, just like fire, have the ability to create life and beauty. We can encourage others, and we can also tear others down. We can speak to one another in a way that breathes life, like Jesus did when he walked on this earth. It can also have the ability to cause destruction and pain. James paints this picture that our speech teeters a fine line between life and death. This fine, like I think of a knife, on the edge of a knife, that it could fall one way very easily. What I believe James is getting at, so what we already have here, is that our words have power. Due to our words having power and the ability to cause lasting impacts on others, sometimes we get burned. I remember when I was about 16 or 17 years old, I was going about my life, doing my thing, and I remember I was asking questions, and if you know me or have spent a little time with me, I tend to have a little bit higher energy levels. And I remember this person close to me called me annoying. Now, I've been called much, much, much worse. Much worse, and we won't have to go there, but much worse. But I remember feeling embarrassed and not knowing how to respond, because this was who I am. I wasn't being over the top. I was just being me. And then I was called annoying. And even to this day, I still find myself, like even now, I still find myself stopping how I'm acting, rethinking, am I being annoying right now? Am I showing too much energy right now? When I speak on stage, am I too all over the place? Because I'm trying to reel that back off of one comment that happened over 10 years ago. Our words can cut deep, and it can change who we are. I'm always thinking, how am I being perceived? Am I being perceived this way or that way? Am I annoying? Am I not annoying? There's a proverb that states this: the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. I'm sure we've all felt the destructive power of the tongue. That's one of my stories. I bet we all have plenty of stories of the destructive power of the tongue. Man, words can cut deep, can't they? Especially from those who are close to us. Not only have I been on the receiving end of this, I've dished it out as well. Working with the youth, those of you who don't know, I'm the youth pastor here, brings some of the highest highs and the lowest lows. I think most of the students who have been in the group for a while have most likely gotten a personalized apology from me or one to the group, due to me having the difficulty of controlling the tongue, which James talks about here. For me, it gets really overwhelming when we're in the middle of an event and there's 15 kids asking me questions about what we're going to eat next, what we're going to do next. Well, I have an allergy. I have this. I don't really want to do that. Well, does my mom know? Where's my phone? I lost my shoe, Mark. Where's my shoe? How do I know where your shoe is? I don't know where your shoe is. I don't know where my shoes are. I don't know where your shoes are. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, why are they asking me these? And I'm like, oh, yeah. I'm the youth pastor, that makes sense. That checks out. And I've often found myself in the wake of my own destruction from snapping at the students and having to go back and to apologize, to say I shouldn't have spoke that way. I shouldn't have responded that way, and I'm sorry. Last week, if you were here, Becca gave us some incredibly helpful tools to apply to our relationships, and one of them came from James 1:19, which says this: "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." Wow, that's really easy to read that one verse. It's a whole lot different trying to live that out. But imagine what our relationships would look like if we actually just stopped. Just stopped. Even gave ourselves 15 seconds before we spoke again. Slowed down, thought, and then replied. Often, I find in myself, when I actually stop, which I'll be really honest, tends to be kind of rare, but when I actually stop, I often don't end up speaking at all. That's not a bad thing. I think a lot of us can probably do to speak a little less. Just like an unattended fire, our words have destructive power. I'm sure a lot of you know, but that fire in Eagle Creek started by some teenagers that went and lit fireworks where they shouldn't have been lighting fireworks in a season, in a place. But it took one spark, 50,000 acres gone. It was unattended. They also do controlled burns. Those are attended. Those are watched. But when it goes unattended, it can have some destructive power. Our words, as with fire, have the ability to also create life as well as destroy it. I want you guys to think of someone that had a positive impact on you. At some point in your life, think of that person, the person that made that one comment that maybe even changed the course of your life. I took Wood's class all 4 years, from a freshman until I was a senior. And by the time I was a senior, I had had the same teacher for 4 years, who at the beginning helped me make a cutting board that I think my mom still has. It's awful, but she still has it. What a sweetie. And at the end was making things a bit more complex, like cabinets and dining tables and coffee tables and things like that. But I'd spent a lot of time with him, and the class was designed to, when you were to start a project, you had to make the blueprints of it. So you had to write out on graph paper the exact measurements of every board that you were going to cut, the exact tools you were going to use, a step-by-step process from the beginning to the very end. And this took a lot of time. And for a 17-year-old boy, it took too much time. I would rather be out on the table saw or the chop saw or the miter saw doing things than to be in the classroom just writing. And I remember it took so long to do this. And so I started to cut some corners. Started to think, I bet he doesn't actually look at every single page. And so I started to cut a few things here and there, and I turned it in, denied. Be back in the classroom, denied, back in the classroom. After 6 times of me trying to submit my plans and then being denied, it finally got accepted. And then I remember, as a senior, he was watching over my shoulder with almost every cut I made. Almost every single one. If I didn't use the router correctly, he would have me redo it again. If I didn't make the cut correctly on the table saw, redo it again. And finally, I just snapped. It's like, why don't you just let me work? Just let me do this. And he said, I know you're capable of making something better than you have been. And at the time, that kind of stung. I was like, ooh, I don't like that. But as I've sat with that, and I remember even sitting with it for a day and a week, it drastically shaped how I approached woodworking and then how I approached life in general. This one person believed in me when I was a senior in high school that I could be making better work than I was making. And I'm still finding myself working towards that. What is the best that I can do when I'm doing this project. And that was over 10 years ago that one comment was made. So we have these contrasting images. One of a comment that was made about me being annoying, and then one about, I know you can do better work. And both of them were around the same time, and both of them I'm still thinking about, and both of them I'm still acting off of as well. But someone believed in me, knew I could do better, and encouraged me to get there. In James chapter 3, he talks about these huge ships being pushed by strong winds. But it's that the small rudder that directs the path in which the pilot wants to go. Have you guys witnessed this before? It's just the tongue can change the whole direction of a conversation. I think of my daughter, who is 3, going to turn 4 in a couple months. And if you know toddlers or children, or quite honestly, just people in general, but I'm thinking of my 3-year-old, when she comes up me with this high energy, because in life and death, she's running to me and she's using her high voice, she's screaming, she's crying, and if I meet that energy, what happens? Boom, 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 boom. And then I'm crying, everybody's crying, mass chaos ensues. But when she runs to me and she's crying and screaming and she's worked up and frustrated, but if I get down to her level and I speak slowly, oh no, what happened? And I soften my voice to a whisper and I hold her close. The whole direction of that conversation changes. She matches that. She meets it. And all of a sudden, that small rudder being pushed by the strong winds of my 3-year-old daughter is now directed in a path of healing and is creating something beautiful rather than frantic. I've often seen the exact same thing with adults and in myself. If I'm frustrated and worked up over something and I go to complain, or I meet someone with the angst and they just meet it with an apology, or meet it with an ownership, or meet it with just a calmness, all of a sudden it's making me look inward. Maybe I'm a little worked up right now. Maybe I'm a little frustrated. We have an opportunity to enter into each other's lives and to speak encouragement to one another. That's a powerful gift and tool. That is powerful. I'm again reminded of that verse in Proverbs. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Just a word of encouragement can transform the direction of somebody's day or life. That word of encouragement my Woods teacher gave me as a senior redirected my life. Our words have the power of encouragement. Our words have the ability to transform any situation by speaking life or speaking negatively, or even to heal past wounds. This is a recent photo of the Eagle Creek fire, the fire that burned over 50,000 acres in the gorge. This was right after it happened, and then this was taken recently, within the past 6 months or so. And you can see there's already the regrowth taking place. Fires are a natural part of nature. They've been happening since the beginning. Fires are an integral part of the system. And honestly, I would love to go into the nitty-gritty of the importance of wildfires, but that can be for another message. The essence of what I'm saying is fire can actually heal landscapes. It makes room for new, needed growth. It clears out the underbrush for new to come in, which then brings in more wildlife, and it is this cycle, a needed cycle. Also, how we speak to ourselves can heal what words of destruction may have caused in the past. I know this may sound a bit silly, but what we say up here in our brains changes who we are at our core. What we say about ourselves matters. If I'm speaking negatively about myself consistently, I'm going to start to feel that. There's a quote by Lao Tzu, a Chinese philosopher credited with founding Taoism, and the quote says this: "Watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character." There's an understanding in this quote that goes beyond Taoism and into the psyche of all of us. If we were regularly putting ourselves down, saying things like, "How could God love somebody like me? It's impossible. I'm awful. I'm the worst. I'm evil. I'm mean. I'm this." We start to believe it. Then we start to act it. And it starts this cycle. Instead, what if we spoke truth in love? Saying things like, "I am created in his image." That's Genesis 1:27. Or, "God cares about me as an individual," coming from Matthew 6. Or, "I know the season is hard, but I know God hears me and is with me," out of the book of 1 John. A while back in the youth group, we did a practice where we all had. I asked them to start thinking of practical things like actual words that people have said to them, encouraging words from a parent, a teacher, a leader, someone. And we wrote them on sticky notes. And mixed in within these were also verses where God has spoken to us about being created in his image. Basic truths that are who we are, given from the words of Jesus. So they are mixed in with things like, "My parents are proud of me," or "My teacher said I'm good at this," or "My wife thinks this for me." So seeing that safe with me, and my wife is encouraging, or my wife likes how I speak to my children, or my parents are proud of me, or the words of the teacher that said something encouraging 10 years ago. So now when I'm looking at that mirror, those are the things that I'm seeing, and it seems very maybe silly, but it's also very practical, because the more I see it, the more I'm thinking it, the more I'm thinking it, the more I'm believing it, the more I believe it, the more I'm acting off of it, that I am someone of worth. And all of a sudden, those things start to heal some inside wounds that have been sitting there for a very long time. James 3:9 says this: "With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness." Again, James is hitting on our words teeter a fine line between life and death. How am I going to use my words? Towards others and towards myself. All this to say, what if I acted as if my words have healing power? I'm going to invite the band up now as I close out. But I want to say that again. What if I acted as if my words have healing power? There's an invitation from James that I see here. It is to invite us into a new way of speaking towards one another, a new way of being. When Jesus walked on this earth, he walked in that manner. He spoke life into others who's lived some past mistakes and calling her daughter. That's powerful stuff. Those are words of healing. He walked it, and he showed us how to walk it. And I want to challenge us as we go forth to be people who speak life into ourselves and others. Let us go and speak in a way that brings life into this world, doesn't take away. Let me pray. Lord, thank you for when you walked on this earth, that you walked in a manner that we can follow, that you spoke life into those around you, that you healed those you interacted with, whether physically or emotionally or spiritually, but you spoke in a way that created life. Lord, I ask, even as we walk out, if all we take away is our words have power, that we think about that. In your name, Lord, amen.